Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Monday Matt channel, and yesterday was the big Patriot Prayer / Proud Boy v Antifa battle in Portland. And this guy was there. I don't know what he's calling himself, Kek Warrior, Kekistani Warrior. I call him part of the Doof Troop. As a person who's part of a big famous Kekistan flag photo from VidCon 2017, I look at this guy and I'm like, oh God, what did I help promote? I have nothing against the Kekistani meme as a whole. He doesn't make it any easier to defend. You know what I'm trying to say here? But this guy's popped up before in a few places, so he's definitely part of the Portland crowd, or at least lives somewhere here in the Pacific Northwest. But anyway, that's probably the best image to come out of yesterday, because yesterday was pretty much, a pretty big shit show. However, wasn't as big as it could have been, and that's entirely fine. In fact, this is how the news on Good Morning America decided to cover it, and I want you guys to take a look here at at how the media tried to frame it versus probably what actually happened.
We want to move to Portland, and there were tense hours as extreme right-wing protesters took to the streets, and they were met by counter-protesters.
ABC's Marcus Moore is there with a look at the heavy police presence to keep the peace. Marcus, good morning.
Paula and Eva, good morning to you. A much calmer scene here in Portland this morning after what was a full day of protest, and police arrested 4 people and at one point used rubber bullets to break up a crowd.
Dueling protests hitting a boiling point in the streets of Portland. Alt-right and far-left groups clashing, police turning to flashbangs and tear gas to disperse an unruly crowd. Police say some protesters threw rocks and bottles at officers. The tension in the city starting with a rally hosted by far-right group Patriot Prayer, the group's pro-Trump leader running for Senate.
Do you guys agree with me that the people at the top are laughing at us right now?
But far-left anti-fascist or Antifa groups attempting to drown out the Patriot Prayer rally in a city where Antifa's roots run deep. Tensions escalating with small scuffles throughout the day. A journalist injured during the protest left bleeding from the head. This morning, a look at the items Portland police say they seized as potential weapons, including shields donning Confederate flags, a knife, wooden rods, and at least 1 fireworks mortar. This is the 3rd Patriot Prayer rally this summer. At least 1 person was seriously injured when a demonstration turned violent in July. Police declared that protest a riot. And this weekend's demonstration in Portland comes nearly a full year after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. The next day, an alt-right sympathizer ramming his car into a crowd of counter-protesters, killing 32-year-old Heather Heyer.
And that was the real concern going into this weekend, that there perhaps might be a repeat of that violence. We learned overnight that only 3 people suffered injuries during this protest this weekend. Back to you.
I guess that is good news. Marcus, thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so what did that tell us about the whole situation? For one, if you notice how the way Good Morning America was very heavily pushing the narrative that it was the right-wingers that were the ones that were like being the violent ones. Honestly, that's not the case, right? And that's actually one of the biggest things to take away from all of these events outside of maybe Charlottesville, where there was a clash on both sides, which were clearly the fault of protesters who were in the park, leaving the park to engage with counter protesters, which is one of the things that led the police to completely just giving up and shutting it all down, which is one of the things that caused the riot that led to the death of Heather Heyer. Had the police in Charlottesville done their actual job and kept the peace and kept the group separated, then that would not have happened. In fact, actually, Portland police, look, you have to give credit to Portland PD. They showed a lot of restraint yesterday in the vast majority of regards. They made sure to separate the groups. They made sure to keep them separated. They made sure to not let them intermix for the most part, and they kept the peace. Yesterday was relatively peaceful. Good Morning America made it out to be like some kind of war zone, some kind of crazy thing had gone down. And yes, while there were some injuries, while there were some problems there, what happened ultimately was that the group, the Patriot Prayer, and their guy running for Senate were holding a rally down on the waterfront. I believe this was chosen specifically because they could, in fact, have open carry down there. there. Police were not allowing weapons to come in terms of, like, we saw the clubs and the batons. There was a club with a Kekistani flag on it. I have a feeling El Senor Doof Warrior over here was probably the one rocking it. There were some Confederate flag stuff there, which, again, come on, guys, what the hell? That doesn't, again, that's all there just to antagonize and aggravate the other side, right? You saw one sign there saying Antifa equals evil, right? Just, it's all for the show. This whole thing was political theater. It really was. This whole thing was legitimately political theater. But those guys were there doing their thing. Antifa and counter protesters showed up, because this is now actually how we have to frame this. You've got your counter protesters, which is Antifa on the left, and your protesters, which are the right. And there is a distinct difference between the two of them, because it was the counter protesters that were the ones that were throwing rocks and throwing bottles at police. It was the counter protesters in their actions that caused the police to push back on them and to disperse them. That was happening yesterday. It wasn't necessarily the Proud Boys and the Patriot Prayer that were causing the problem. Like, this GMA would kind of have you believe, this particular piece would have you believe that they were the ones that were causing the problems, that they were the ones that were out there causing violence. I'm not going to say there weren't any bad apples among them, but even last year, when there was a big free speech rally in downtown Portland where Antifa showed up and basically surrounded this park full of conservatives who were holding this free speech rally. My cousin was there. I know Tim Pool was there talking about it. You can see that the people inside the park, the people there pro free speech, were basically, they were like slightly antagonizing the other side, but they were pretty much there doing their thing. And it was the sheer overwhelming number of Antifa that were pushing back against them. And those are the ones that Portland police were confiscating homemade axes and chunks of brick and other weapons that were being brought to this specific event. And that was also the rally a month ago where Patriot Prayer and Antifa battled each other in streets of Portland, and there were some injuries. This time around, the cops did not want it to be Charlottesville 2.0. The SPLC was going out there saying that this was going to be Charlottesville 2.0. And the Portland PD pushed back the counter protesters in order to give Patriot Prayer and those guys the opportunity to get out. And they had a staging location across the river in Vancouver, Washington, and they were busing people in and out, from my understanding of it. I was actually down in Vancouver yesterday, wanted to go check out the protest, couldn't really find the time. And that's okay. From my understanding of it, 4 people were just arrested. That's it. And I'm pretty sure they were all counter protesters, right? But the way that this GMA article or this little news bit covered it was that it made it look like it was the other side. There were flashbangs that were going off. There were rubber bullets that were being fired, and people out there are probably thinking it had a lot to do with the conservatives. I would argue that it wouldn't. Back during the 2016 presidential election, when Trump was elected, there were 4 or 5 nights of protests in downtown Portland, the Not My President protests. And on I think the 3rd or 4th night, my girlfriend and I decided to head down there and to check it out. And this was a Saturday night. This is mostly teenagers that were just kind of hanging out, killing time, when they were off school, and they were playing games with the cops. So cops were throwing out flashbang grenades. I was there when it went off. They were arresting some people, but they were also trying to push these crowds back and get them to disperse. And what I could tell from yesterday, what I was reading about yesterday, they were using the same tactics on the counter protesters. But that, again, is the problem with the media perception. Do I like Patriot Prayer and the Proud Boys? Hell no. Hell no, I don't like those guys. All right? Like, they're entitled to their free speech 100%. They are able to do it. They're able to express themselves. The counter protesters are able to express themselves, but we know that people are going to these events looking to fight. We know that there are people that are coming out from all over the country to cover these events because they can get a lot of media attention as a result. I'm not going to lie. If I were to go down there and cover it, it would be specifically to help bolster some numbers on my channel. And that I will be honest about. I want to see it. I want to cover it. Sure. But I know that there's going to be a financial incentive to do so, which is kind of the reason why a lot of people were there. I was watching one guy's stream and he was out there like, he's on the conservative side and he's streaming and he goes, yeah, I had to pay for myself to drive out here and put myself up in a hotel. And, if you guys are liking it, go ahead and cover it. And again, I don't fault the guy. Your hustle is your hustle, but there was a lot of that going on. And I'm looking at people, looking at all the cameras, all the GoPros that are out, looking at everyone recording it. And here's the sad truth of it, guys. A lot of the people that go to these things, similar to people going to the Not My President protests or the other kind of protests, They go out there to watch the violence firsthand. They go out there to watch these skirmishes firsthand. And the best way to equate them, in my opinion, is go back to the Civil War when you had battles and there would be fighting in the field, you know, North versus South, brother versus brother, fighting it out. And then you would look on the hillside and there would be people out there watching. Now, we're always voyeuristic in nature. Don't get me wrong. Everyone's voyeuristic. Okay. We want to know if our neighbors two doors down are boning. We want to know, not specifically for any particular reason other than it's just knowledge to have, but we are voyeuristic. And this is kind of how things are now. These events, these protests are turning violent because there are people out there, I believe personally, that want to go there to push. There are people out there who want to go fight, and there's people out there who want to go and watch them fight. What they should ultimately do, because hey, here's the thing: Portland is only one part of a pretty decent sized state, right? So what you do is you take you take out of the city, you go out of the city, you go into the woods, right? I'm sure Doof guy over here could probably show you the way. You find a field somewhere, and you just have it the hell out. You just have it the hell out. Going to the city streets, bringing out the police, costing the taxpayers thousands and thousands of dollars, potentially broken and destroyed private property, which we've seen before in regards to like the Not My President protests, where people were going around and they were in fact destroying property. You go out somewhere and you beat the crap out of each other because that's ultimately what you want to do. That's ultimately what you want to do, and you should just do it. Because I don't think much of this boils down to politics. I think it does boil down to, for a lot of people, to go out there and try to get into a fight. If you didn't, you wouldn't bring the weapons you're bringing. You wouldn't be dressed in armor. You wouldn't do all of these things if it was meant to be a polite conversation. Because we're moving past polite conversation into something else now. It's one of the reasons why, like, as much as interesting as it would be to go down there and to see this thing firsthand, I'm ultimately glad that I didn't. Because I don't feel that there is much progress to be made off of these particular rallies. I think it's just two organizations that are just trying to find ways to get close to each other, to puff up each chests and try to see who's going to throw down. And then the media comes out and the media pushes it and the media propagates it and they profit off of it. And that only furthers the narrative. That only furthers the divide and furthers the crappy situation. That's just how I see it. Because what was accomplished yesterday? Sure as hell wasn't the message to try to get that guy elected in the Senate. No one was talking about that. No one. It was just Proud Boys and Patriot Prayer versus Antifa. That was the message. That was what people were there for. It wasn't political. It wasn't free speech. It wasn't any other thing other than to watch two opposing organizations battle it out on the streets of Portland and to get a firsthand view from the comfort of your home or from the comfort of a hillside. Again, if you care about these issues, either try to work it out civilly or push these guys to go find some place to beat the shit out of each other, because that's quite frankly where it's at. But those are just my thoughts on this one. I'm sure the comments are going to be a lot of fun. Be sure to let me know how much you guys think. My name is, of course, Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel. Be sure to thumbs it up, subscribe, share it around, check back often for more content from me. I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day and peace out. If you enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a patron today for just $1 per month over at patreon.com/mundanematt.